Do you believe that this is a legitimate issue, that metabolic health is massively on the decline in the country?
I mean, there's obviously a major increase in metabolic disorders of all kinds, and also younger and younger. 1960, 13% of Americans were obese, and now 40% of Americans are obese. 1/4 of teenagers fall under pre-diabetic. So, I mean, I think we do have certainly a problem.
This is Generation Health. We bring you the latest news, cutting-edge research, and time-tested best practices, helping you live a longer, healthier life. Sitting across from me, PharmD, board-certified clinical nutritionist, Joseph DiMatteo. We call him Joey.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Good to be here.
I'm good. And to my right, Dante DiMatteo, PharmD. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Excellent. And sitting on third mic,
there he is.
Sitting down as fast as possible,
I'm
Josiah
here.
Schweinberg. Editor extraordinary, not editor. You're the engineer.
I would never, ever pretend to be the editor.
We let the real professionals do that.
Michael Depesh.
We have nothing that needs edited.
Much
typically.
cred.
It's true. We just let these rip.
This is unedited.
Totally unedited. So here's the question.
Subscribe for the unedited version.
Nope. No. That's not ever going to get released, just in case you're wondering. If you had to survive alone in the wilderness, how long would you survive for?
Oh man. I mean, that's just not a strength of mine at all. I don't think I'd make it very long. I would be scared.
Yes.
I have no survival skills related to like what plants to eat and stuff like that. It would not be pretty.
It would be as long as your fat stores would survive.
Yeah, I don't think I could put like a number on it because again, I have no basis of information for this kind of thing.
Fair
but
enough.
It wouldn't be pretty.
Okay.
No ability.
Dante?
Same.
Yeah?
Yeah, we're cut from the same cloth in that way.
You guys never went camping as
Boy
kids?
Scouts, none of that.
Nothing?
I did some Cub Scouts. So,
Well, it's not zero.
yeah, but the only thing I really remember is the Pinewood Derby, and I don't think that helped me too much out in the wilderness.
Probably wasn't a major strength of yours either. I don't think.
What was your Pinewood Derby car? What was it? Do you remember?
One of our family friends helped us make it. So I don't even remember doing any of the work.
Oh, that's lame.
I could probably dig it out. It was a nice red car.
Nice. Did you win?
I don't think.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Josiah, how long would you last in the wilderness all alone?
What kind of conditions are we talking about?
We're assuming forests and it's not winter.
I want to say a week, maybe.
A week?
A week?
I think that's
I think I could probably forage for some things.
I
And
think that's optimistic.
yeah.
Probably.
No. I mean, I've seen The Edge, so I'd like to think. Great movie, by the way.
Yeah, solid.
Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Yep. And Alec Baldwin.
Yes.
Man, why do I know that? But I can't remember my kids' social security numbers.
Great movie. But so that's what made me think, because they're like snow, harsh conditions, those
Right.
types of, like,
Yeah.
killing bears.
Like the Revenant. I could see myself flipping that into gear.
Just switching.
Just when the instincts kick in.
What
just
you learn from movies.
Yeah, sleeping inside of a bear. Doing whatever it takes.
What would be the first plant you would eat, Josiah? Like, is there any like in your mind? You're like, yeah, I'm gonna go right after that. Think it'll be nutritious, safe.
berries.
Berries?
I'm looking
Yeah.
at some berries.
Aren't berries the ones you have to be the most careful about?
I know that'd be mushrooms.
No. Well, yeah.
But-
You might as well take that risk. That's a
the
risk maybe worth
mushrooms are the
taking.
one risk worth taking.
It's all risky in that scenario. I would probably say a week too. I'd have a great shelter.
Yeah.
Shelter wouldn't be the problem. It would be food. That would be the.
I would eat insects. I think that's what I would look
That's what
for.
I'm thinking. Yeah. I mean, so
Yeah,
how long
that's
can you
true.
go without, I mean, 3-4 days?
Yeah, if you've got water,
That's
you can
the-
go substantially longer. That's the thing. People think you're going to starve to death. You're not. You're going to be dehydrated, and that's the issue.
Yeah. So if there's water, some sort of water around, collect from the rain off
Seek
the
a creek.
trees.
You have to seek a creek, and you'll be.
So then at that point, it's just a matter of,
Yeah. Then there's the other
Shelter.
problem of I would be so lonely that I would not want to survive any longer because I need other people. I get really sad when I'm alone.
You're very
Wilson,
social.
dude.
Yeah.
You got to have a Wilson.
Oof. Yeah. I don't have a beach ball. I wouldn't choose a volleyball to go with me as my one item to take to the wilderness.
What
I
would
take
it
a
be?
satellite phone. Please come,
Starlink.
please come
Starlink
save
phone.
me. I'm alone and cold. Yeah, that would be it. Okay.
Cry out for Starlink.
We got a lot of big stuff to talk about today, and none of it is related to this. Joey, what is in the bottle? Let's talk about, I don't know.
Probiotic Essentials.
That's a good one. Let's talk about
I got you.
Probiotic
I got you
Essentials.
back.
All right.
So Probiotic Essentials is one of the foundational products in our line.
Yes.
So what are probiotics? They are live microorganisms, typically bacteria, but can also be yeast, and they have health benefits. Some of the benefits include improved digestion, so they can help or prevent diarrhea, especially traveler's diarrhea. They help improve gut health in general by reducing inflammation in the gut, keeps bowels regular, improves immune system, skin health, lowers risk of infection, reduce risk of cavities. There's also increasing evidence that there's some link to mood imbalances via the gut-brain link. So there's a lot of benefits, and this is not meant to be a deep dive into those, but those are just the basics of why you would take a probiotic and what they do.
So just to start off with, why do we need bacteria in our body at all? That seems like a bad idea.
There are a lot of reasons, not just, what the benefits of them do, but in the gut, again, with helping with digestion and also balancing bad bacteria. So if there's an overabundance of bad bacteria or an imbalance, you can get breakdowns in your intestinal barrier. So it can allow things into your bloodstream that don't need to be there. Again, it can harm the immune system. There can be a decrease of immune functioning and just general digestive health. So you need those good bacteria, that good bacteria in your gut. Also involved in vitamin production, nutrient absorption.
Wow.
So there's a whole lot that goes on in terms of why you need good bacteria.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so continue. What were you saying?
So food sources. I mean, when we talk about a dietary supplement, I always feel I'm remiss if I'm not mentioning the food sources. So we'll start with broadly fermented foods. So fermented foods are foods that are made through the growth and metabolic activity of live microbes. Okay. So there are fermented foods such as cheese, sourdough bread, pickles, even wine, where you'd say, hey, if these are fermented foods, are they a source of good bacteria, of probiotics? So for one of two reasons, all of those things are not. Reason one is the fermentation is being done by a bacterial strain that's not of benefit, either neutral, most likely neutral, or they are processed after the fact, via heat, typically, that kills the live bacteria. So for one reason or another, none of those, even though they're created through a fermentation process, they are not sources of good bacteria.
Okay,
so
interesting.
legitimate food sources, I think the one we all know of is yogurt. But also kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, but a pretty limited list. Okay. The other thing I want to touch on related to diet is prebiotic versus probiotic. So in a nutshell, prebiotics are high fiber whole foods. Okay. They're basically fibers that feed the good bacteria in the gut. So it helps them to grow, to be active. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, onions, bananas, garlic, a variety of things, but it's mainly plants, fruits, vegetables. They're going to give you that prebiotic, fertile ground for good bacteria to grow.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's prebiotic, and you said probiotics, the only food sources that really matter are kimchi, sauerkraut, yogurt, and what was the other one? Kefir. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So again, it's just another layer to the critical importance of a whole food diet.
Right.
If you have that daily intake of whole foods, especially fruit and vegetables, you're generally healthy. You don't have chronic gut issues, bowel irregularity, no skin autoimmune conditions. Is there a need for a probiotic in those cases? There still could be some gaps there, but in general, it's much less than somebody with those or even a history of antibiotic use. If you're not checking one of those boxes, yes, your need for a supplement goes down. But if you do check those boxes, this is where it can fill in that gap for you.
I love kimchi, but I do not eat it on a daily basis.
Exactly. Yes. And yogurt, again, is a good source. And I don't want to harp on, well, there's some sugar in yogurt, so it's bad. But just in general, when you look at our diets overall and some issues that can arise from dysbiosis, imbalance of the bacteria, and how that can occur, high sugar in diets has been found to increase the proteobacteria, which is a broad term for inflammatory bacteria. So both for systemic low-level inflammation and also any type of irritable bowel, inflammatory bowel conditions. It increases those types of bacteria and decreases bacterioidetes. That was a tough one.
That's a
but
big word.
They are the protective types of bacteria. So you're contributing to the imbalance just via a high sugar diet. So I'm not saying that yogurt counteracts the benefits. It does not. But if yogurt typically has added sugar, you're adding some other added sugars, you're starting to maybe get off the mark a little bit versus what could be a straight supplement if that's what you need.
Okay, so bringing it back to Probiotic Essentials, tell me more.
So Probiotic Essentials, I think, one thing to mention for sure is that relative to all the supplements in our line, this one has been the most customized. It's manufactured directly for us. It's also one of the most difficult products to manufacture, to get a quality product, and also to kind of pin down some of the differences between other supplements. So like I say often in these segments, this is not here to say this is ours is the absolute best and everything else is garbage. It's not that. But to find a good one, there are a few kind of layers to go through. So first of all, the specific strains that are in our probiotic were handpicked, and the company that we work with is a probiotic specialist. So again, that doesn't mean that because you're a manufacturing company makes many supplements that's inherently bad, but we go directly to a probiotic specialist. This is what they do. Everything from the upgrades they have in their lab, their air and handling system, they're CGMP certified. They gear everything towards the production of probiotics. So again, there are a couple just different levels here, and I'll go into a few different ones. For a probiotic to have health benefit, it must be consumed alive. And I know that sounds obvious, but when you're looking at a label, there is no way to distinguish between live and inactive or degraded, broken down probiotics. There's no way to do that on a label. So you don't know for certain what you're getting from an active versus deactive standpoint. So ours are manufactured for viability, okay? And not just viability at the time of production, but what's critical here is shelf life viability, okay? So this is accomplished in our product, and I'll go into some of the differences using freeze drying.
Okay.
So we get that question a lot. Why aren't yours refrigerated? So there's nothing wrong with a refrigerated probiotic. It's just not inherently better. What occurs is they're active, they're live. To prevent them from being broken down, you keep them cold, and you have to ensure that throughout the entire supply chain. Ours has an extra step. It's freeze drying that essentially renders them dormant. So they're not dead, but they are dormant. So no, they can't exceed 115 degrees. They need to stay at room temperature, but they do not need to be refrigerated for that reason. They are activated by moisture.
Okay.
So a few layers there. Say, well, moisture, I open my bottle, I leave it open, those kind of things. The capsule itself is critical. It's an enteric coated, multi-layer 2-piece capsule that protects the product itself whenever the bottle is opened and air has access to it, and moisture, most importantly, and also protects it in the gut from stomach acid, because the viability once it's in your gut is critical. If you're using a probiotic, may all the labeling and all the growth and everything is correct and proper and ideal. If it's just in a real basic capsule, you're going to lose a lot of that, depending on the strain. But you have the potential to lose a lot of that in the stomach acid itself.
Okay, because it's got to make it down to the gut.
Exactly. The other thing about in terms of measuring the CFUs, the colony forming units, that's the way probiotics are labeled, is that you can't just assay them when the product is made, because you're going to put a certain expiration date on there. Ours are usually 2 years plus. So we have ours assayed at the time of production. It's labeled as 12 billion to ensure that we meet that expiration date. It usually initially is like 18 to 19 billion.
Wow.
And then at expiration, it's over 12. It's usually 13, 14, something like that. So That's a critical thing as well. You could have somebody, again, just trying to limit cost, hit the mark when it's initially produced, and then fall way below that by the time it hits expiration.
So Probiotic Essentials, even at time of expiration, are still going to meet that
or exceed yes.
that level. That's fantastic. Okay.
Yes. And in growing and cultivating these probiotics, they use to make sure what I mentioned before about the activity, the live versus inactive. They use something called a plate count. So that's the gold standard for measuring the activity level. Essentially, they dilute their probiotics down in the product in a broth. They plate it on a culture medium and allow it then to make sure that they grow. Because if the probiotic is dead, it's not going to grow. If it's alive, it will continue to grow if given food to grow. So that's, again, a critical just understanding of how this is done each step of the way. And that is also done at expiration date to make sure that those are still viable, able to colonize, able to grow.
That's fantastic.
This is fascinating. I mean that genuinely. I know it may sound sarcastic, but there's a lot that goes into our probiotic.
There is. And in terms of the refrigeration thing, I just want to touch on that again, because we get that a lot. I'm not saying that it makes it better because ours doesn't need it, but there is that extra step. That does cost money to do. Further, even if at the company level, the manufacturing level, you have ensured that every step of the way that this is the product, yes, needs refrigerated, but is live and active, you cannot quite guarantee what occurs at every step. So think it's going from the manufacturer via a shipping partner to a wholesaler typically, then to a retailer,
right,
who then may be shipping it again, then to an end consumer.
Right.
So what ultimately, and even whenever we spoke to them in terms of initially designing this, they suggested this because it was a little disconcerting. Well, probiotics are supposed to be refrigerated, right? That they close the loopholes to potential issues, because any breakdown in that chain, including at the end consumer level, can now render your probiotic degraded. Whenever you close that loophole via that extra step, via that freeze drying, then that's ideal to make sure that the product maintains its viability.
That makes sense. That's fantastic. Okay. I love that we've got, this product is so well thought out, so thorough, every single step accounted for.
Yes.
Delightful.
And the design of it itself, I don't want to go into this too much because it just, there's 11 different strains in here, but it is broad for a reason. You'll see a lot of probiotics that have single strains. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're looking for a daily probiotic, we have, again, those 11 strains that cover the bases for overall good health. When you take a prebiotic in, when you eat a banana or a good fruit or vegetable, it's not just cultivating one organism. It's broad. It can cultivate all of those positive organisms. So we use Lactobacillus acidophilus, rhamnosus, Lactobacillus casei, paracasei. That's more involved in inflammatory bowel disease. Plantarum helps the digestive system, also helps to produce vitamins. Bulgaricus, more directed to digestion, diarrhea. So there's a lot, there's various reasons. And again, I don't want to go into every detail and why, but just know it's broad. They're well researched in terms of what we picked. And also in working with the company, there are times whenever certain probiotics can, it's called competitive inhibition. Basically, you fight over the same food, for lack of a better way, and certain combinations and certain amounts don't work as well. They know all that. I mean, again, we are not manufacturers, so we have to really trust who we work with. And these guys, they just know the business and know probiotics inside and out.
That's fantastic. You've convinced me. I'm going to start taking probiotics. What is standard dosage? Anything special or different I need to know about that?
Yeah, so if you're taking it more for, hey, I know they're good for me. I know my diet's not perfect, but I have nothing really going on, 1 a day is fine. If maybe you're creeping more into the skin conditions, maybe a little bowel, any type of inflammatory, diarrhea, recurring things like that, then you go up to 1 twice a day.
Okay. So
it just depends what you have going on. Then if there's more serious conditions, more diagnoses, it alters from there. But just in general, if you're thinking about taking it, 1 for standard basic health. When you start getting into maybe you have a history of antibiotic use, skin issues, like I said, digestive issues, go up to twice a day for sure.
And is this one of those that is well served by taking it with food, or is it
You
fine,
can take
whatever?
it either way. You don't maybe want to take it with a lot of acid at one time, so like an orange juice or something like that. But overall, they're meant to withstand that. It's not a problem. I see that recommendation broadly for probiotics. It doesn't really apply here because of the way, again, it's encapsulated.
That is fantastic. Joey, I love this series. Thank you for doing this. I'm sold. I'm going to go get some Probiotic Essentials.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tyler.
So we're going to venture into some dangerous waters. I know everybody is really sick of politics at this point, so we want to make a point that we're not trying to be political. That's not the point. But this past election season, we had folks like RFK Jr. Really bring public health to the forefront. Health and wellness has really had a moment in the public consciousness, and it seemed like we should maybe take a minute to talk about some of the issues that have been brought up.
There's tons of RFK clickbait.
Yeah.
So I think he's, whether you like him or not, I do feel for him at this point.
He's kind of been the face of it.
Yes. And I mean, you could argue that he's just completely brought that upon himself, just given some past stances and, maybe doubling down on certain things. And then
the biggest things he's talked about that we've talked about in the past recently are things like chemicals on food and ultra processed food. He talked a lot about, gym memberships and things like that. What jumped out at you when you started hearing that burbling coming up?
So there was one clip of RFK from one of these roundtable sort of discussions around various non-communicable diseases. And the short clip, again, admittedly taking this out of context, but this is what had at least sparked some of our conversation. He said, we could purchase organic food for every American, 3 meals a day, free gym memberships for every American. And so he said this in the context of the rise in the obesity epidemic, in the context of the different anti-obesity medications that are being used. Again, all of which feel like are topics that I'm continually reverting back to. And
we talk about this stuff all the time.
Yes.
And he was talking about it in lieu of, we could spend that money on organic food and gym memberships instead of spending it on like GLP-1 agonists and other things. Is that correct?
Yeah. So he put a dollar amount on the expected, expenditures of the GLP-1 agents, basically, 1.5 to 2 trillion or to something to that extent. That what he, really, like you said, what he's proposing is an alternative to those things that, hey, if you just give me the chance to kind of clean up these organizations, we're going to do things like, ensure people have these organic, highly nutrient dense foods available 3 times a day. People, they're going to more easily be able to lose weight and, stick to healthy behaviors. If we give them a free gym membership, cost won't be an issue. The inequities surrounding health and different, aspects of that won't be an issue because it'll just be free and available.
Right.
And so when you say something like this, you are inherently subject to a million follow-up questions and, critiques.
For the purposes of clarity, maybe we should articulate what are the problems that he is pointing out specifically that he is suggesting these are good solutions to.
With the Make America Healthy Again movement,
Yeah.
there's just this overall decrease in certain health metrics.
Mhm.
Again, most of which are preventable diseases. There's a rise in, cardiovascular disease, rise in type 2 diabetes, rise in obesity. And then these comments are directly in, again, relation to how can we attack the obesity epidemic? How can we, ensure that our children are healthier? Why are suddenly we even asking the question if whether or not my 6-7-year-old is a candidate for an anti-obesity medication? Why can't we just give them these tools that we know, or in his mind, we know that he knows work, possibly better than medications or other available treatments.
Right. Metabolic health, I think, is the phrase that they use a lot. That there's all these diseases related to metabolic health, and that is specifically things like heart disease, high cholesterol, all those things. But it's related to how we eat and process food and what our bodies do with it. Is it legitimate? Do you believe that this is a legitimate issue, that metabolic health is massively on the decline in the country? Joey's nodding.
I mean, there's obviously a major increase in metabolic disorders.
Okay.
Of all kinds, and also younger and younger. I think that's a critical thing too, is that we're seeing it, in earlier and earlier ages.
So it seems like he has, maybe not him, but a problem has been identified, that there is an issue with metabolic health in the country. So then the question becomes, okay, what do we do about it? And that's where there's plenty of room for debate and argument.
Yeah, I mean, just the classic 1960, 13% of Americans were obese, and now 40% of Americans are obese. More than 70% are obese or overweight. 1/4 of teenagers fall under pre-diabetic. So, I mean, I think just out in the most just blanket statements, we do have certainly a problem.
Yeah. As a country, it seems like things have not been moving in the right direction for a while now. And this is probably one of those issues that, in the same way that we didn't get here overnight, we're not going to get out of it overnight either. It's going to take some time.
And so to Joey's point, if you've listened to, if you contextualize a little bit of what RFK has said, there are other clips of him saying, hey, if you have the chronic disease of obesity, look, it's not your fault. It's because of all these things that have gotten worse and worse over time, with the environment, with what we're putting in our food, with the pesticides that are present in different farming practices, the no lower access to organic foods because of costs, all these different things.
Right.
He's put it forth as, hey, this isn't your fault. You've been told that you are having trouble maintaining a healthy weight because it's a lack of willpower. It's a lack of, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You need to take responsibility and fix this yourself. This is largely preventable. What have you been doing that has gotten you to this point? And so that's what I think one of the points that I find fascinating is that, on one hand, I think that's a good message. Hey, you've been for a long time. I think most people can agree that health issues related to lifestyle factors were, a moral failure. This is your fault. This is a shortcoming that you could have stopped. So for him to continue to echo that message in 2024, that there are more factors other than just what you are doing, is reassuring and can definitely help people begin to make changes. But on the flip side, when he says things like, we can control this if we just simply change the foods you have access to and give you a free gym membership. Well, no, I think that there's clearly a misunderstanding of what the chronic disease of obesity, the chronic progressive disease of obesity really is. And again, this is a theme that we continue to talk about time and time again.
Right.
And it's interesting how he I think loses his message, as he says more.
I was going to say more. What do you mean by that?
So it's further creates this divide between how we unpack this problem. For him, it's like, you go one way or the other.
Right.
You go one way or the other. I could fix this problem if I could just take control of the top level of what foods are available, how we farm, and how cheap gym memberships are, basically. Instead of saying, you know what, there are multiple levers to pull there. Maybe there are some policy changes that we can unpack and incentivize people to use gyms and incentivize, community involvement around physical activity. And sure, there are plenty of initiatives that have come and gone around physical activity. So that's ultimately the point. Do you think that just giving free gym memberships is really going to move the needle? It's got to be a combination of those things. Ozempic, Wegovy, the anti-obesity medications that have had unprecedented success are, whether he likes it or not, are going to have to be a part of the conversation. He can still have it his way. He can still certainly try to pull some of those larger levers, but again, you're fundamentally misunderstanding what the individual experiences with chronic obesity by saying that lifestyle would have worked just as well as your stupid medication.
Let me try and steelman his argument, or Joe, you help me out here. Him and the rest of the natural health movement folks, there's a lot of talk about things like glyphosate, additives in food, preservatives, all those sorts of things, the ultra processed foods. How much of that is legitimate, and how much of it is creating a straw man that we can beat up on?
Yeah, I think that's the latter part's a good way to put it. And we've talked about the issues with those things. I think what becomes muddy and what's difficult is, yes, there are potentially a lot of health issues with all of those things that you mentioned. But what typically comes with ultra processed foods is also, from a macro and also micronutrient standpoint, issues. They're high carb, they're probably low in protein, they're low in fiber. So what we can link for certain are those macro and micro issues.
Yeah.
What comes along with it is the ingredients, is the additives. So if you want to pinpoint that the additives are causing these issues, there's a link there. But what is the cause?
Right.
And the cause that I think, can say more for certain is that it's the macro issues. Again, it's the lack of fiber, it's the high carb, it's the lack of protein, it's the high saturated fat. So I think that's what's difficult. I'm not saying those things aren't an issue.
Right.
I'm just saying that whenever they're lumped into foods that have what we know are problems, are you potentially setting up the straw man, like you said?
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying if you take all the food dyes out of Cheetos, they're still Cheetos. They're not a healthy food, and you shouldn't be filling your body with this endlessly, whether it's got additives and preservatives or not.
Exactly.
It's not something that's going to build your health.
Yeah. So for example, one small component or potentially small component of pro-inflammatory states, metabolic issues. So I was just doing some research on probiotics. It could be dysbiosis, so an imbalance of good and bad bacteria. So when you eat whole foods, again, this is one of the many links to eating a whole food diet, high in fruits and vegetables. Those are prebiotics. Your body is able to reproduce and recolonize the good bacteria, which creates a better balance, which has been linked to greater metabolic health. So if your diet is lacking all of those things, and you're lacking whole food intake, then you are increasing your risk of those metabolic issues.
Okay. That makes sense. So then there is legitimacy in some of those issues, but it seems like maybe we're losing the forest for the trees in some regard. Is that a fair way to say that? If that's the case, is there a solution? What can be done? Does the government play a role? I don't know. I'm struggling here because I feel like the answer is all of the above and also none of the above.
Right. But I think that's what's key. Dante was saying to everybody. And nowadays, anytime we've had these like roundtable discussions, to me, it becomes like we're always trying to not go hard right and hard left, not politically, but just black and white, we'll say.
Yes.
And we try to bring it back to the middle. And I think this is a case of it too. So we've got this massive increase in obesity. Is a significant portion of that something that would need a medication? Like Dante talks about, those things that you can't really help and fix. Sure. Is a large percentage of this huge jump due to access, the quick access we have to these processed foods and all of this bad food that's often cheaper and again, very easy to access. And with all of our technological conveniences, does that limits our time that we're going outside and walking around in nature? I see it with my kids. I mean, I had a TV and a video game, and my kid has those things on steroids with the access plus an iPad, and it is hard to get them to go outside. You know what I mean? It's just, so to me, it's still going to be, we can't go so far as to say, oh, well, when you have access to healthy food, I mean, because come on, even if you're paying for organic food 3 times a day, how many people are still going to be like, yeah, you know what, for $10, I can go grab this, or I can eat these vegetables? They're still going to do it. Oh yeah, I got this gym membership. That's nice. I hit it hard for a month or two, but what am I really doing? Am I going back? So I think that you have to just make sure that you are accounting for the access. I think that's a good step, but then you can't leave the other people who can't maybe fix this purely for those things and those things that they've tried and the strides they've made. You still have to make sure that you're not closing the door or closing the acceptability of things like Ozempic and medications.
Yeah.
Right. So go ahead.
And that's so all of that is so on point. The one thing that I wanted to add is just that, not to cut up on RFK even, it's just that he
gets points for bringing this to people's attention.
He does.
Yeah,
he does.
He does. But even with the gym access sentiment, it's still like hey, this worked for me, so this has got to work for everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like It's just hey, I the organic foods and just all I did was start going to the gym, so it's got to just we can extrapolate that out to the population at large. And I think that theme has been recurrent over time that I just have trouble with. And then also, in directly looking at some of the other points, if he mentions gym memberships, free gym memberships in the context of obesity, it's not that exercise isn't beneficial, that it has no role in losing weight. But again, this is another theme and another oversimplification of how this whole thing works. You don't just lose weight and keep the weight off by starting to exercise. We know that the calories that you burn while exercising, the compensation, the way that energy expenditure works, it's way more complicated than let's just increase the amount of calories everybody are burning. Everybody needs to walk more, bike more, run more, and that's going to solve the issue. There's a whole other side of that question or of equation that is solved by things like the anti-obesity medications that we have up until this point have never been able to solve. Meaningful weight loss in a clinical setting is 5% or more. If you look at any interventional study, looking at exercise, lifestyle, all of those factors, you are hard pressed to see a consistent showing of 5% or more greater weight loss in that setting.
Yeah.
So it's not an either or kind of thing. It's lifestyle behavior interventions at the baseline of no matter what medication you use or no matter what surgery you get or no matter whatever you do at the very foundational level, those, the behavioral changes and such that we always talk about, they're always there. It's just that there's this whole other side.
Yeah.
So
you're not saying, so to bring clarity, you're not saying don't do those things. Mm-hmm. The lifestyle interventions, the exercise, that is critical and we should all be doing more of that. Mm-hmm. But that is not the complete picture, and to act as if that is something that will solve the problem for everyone is
narrow-minded.
Sure. Yeah. There are other solutions and there are other things that can come into play and should come into play for a lot of people.
This conversation, we've talked about this in multiple different episodes, and the phrase that Dante, I think, mentions quite a bit is highly nuanced. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very nuanced approach. It's not just all of one thing. So then what is it with somebody, like any sort of celebrity or political figure that comes out and says it's either this, or is it then for the people who are hearing that, it's just confirmation bias for whatever they want to hear? Then it's like, well, see, mm-hmm. I told you because this person said, on either side of this.
Right.
When it's not black or white. And we, so for people who are wanting maybe that from us, that's like not the thing, there's a lot more to.
We'd be doing you a disservice.
Two things can be true at the same time. Yeah. Lifestyle intervention is critical. And also for a lot of people, GLP-1s or whatever other medication is also critical. That both of those things have a role to play in a lot of situations.
Yeah. And I think too, just not to change subject, but along with the additives and those things in food, because then the one clip that I saw, that was a significant part I think what we need, and it's so basic, but we need unbiased, robust studies. I think just to kind of go on and say, hey, this ingredient is allowed in America and it's banned in Germany, I think sounds good, gets a click, gets a wow, look at him. And I'm glad he's looking at those things. But what we really need is, I know come from the government, but government non-biased funding to really understand, keep apples to apples with the macro and micro contents of these foods. What is the difference between these ingredients? Is there a reason to shut these down, these certain chemicals down? I think we kind of need to do the best we can to fund putting to bed, if warranted, some of those ingredients and really see what goes on here.
So maybe that's the question then, is at the end of the day, is the solution a government intervention? Is it free gym memberships, more research, government access to organic food? Or is the solution individual choice and making better choices on an individual level, getting yourself up to go exercise, getting that prescription that you need?
Yes.
It's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That it seems like it's a both and the frustrating part is when one side gets really focused and gets a lot of attention, rightly or wrongly, on one topic. We all go, that's it. That's the magic pill. That's going to solve the problem.
And that's what's going to happen here. Everything swings one way to the other. So now RFK comes out and does this. Let's just, not to get political, but say Trump wins and he has a position of power. And then it's going to be everybody against, you're either with him,
right?
You're on Trump's side, you're on this health side, or you're against him, and you're going to subvert him in every way possible. And you're going to produce every bit of content and opinion you can to subvert it. And we're never kind of working together. Like, let's get an answer. Let's look at some of these things. Let's reevaluate some of these things. It's going to be you're with them or you're against them. That's the way everything seems to be going.
Yeah. The goal should be healthier people.
Yeah.
The healthier population, reducing metabolic dysfunction. And when things get political, it's really frustrating that we lose sight of the bigger goal.
Yeah, but there's going to be a drug side, and there's going to be a food side, right, and there's going to be this money, and there's going to be this money, and there's going to be anti-pharmaceutical industry and pro. And instead of, and I know it sounds, pie in the sky, but that is what we need as much as possible, to blend the uses of both.
Yeah.
Even something as kind of fundamental as weight loss and obesity and being overweight, to blend those things as much as we can. But it just seems like, for all the resources we have, we're trending to a point where it's harder and harder to get those things done because everybody's got their bias. And even if it's a personal bias or a personal thing, that this is just going to turn into a big, big war.
Time will tell.
Yeah. And I mean, it's way more eye-catching to hear, the stuff that they're putting on your food when they're making it, the stuff on your food when it's being farmed, this difference between, it's because no one has access to organic food. It's all this conventional food that has all these things that are at least they believe are causing all of these issues, when there's just at this point no way to say for certain that those are as big of a lever as the other environmental causes and fundamental, root issues with obesity.
So is there anything we can give folks as a takeaway from this? Because individuals can't affect government change. What is the individual response?
Well, it depends on the individual. I mean, ultimately it does. It's just every person is experiencing this whole conversation in a different way.
Yeah.
I mean, it has a lot to do. I mean, Joey and I were raised with somebody like our dad who was obsessed with things that he could control and picking this food over that food. And what are we buying? Maybe if we buy differently, that'll help. Or maybe if we stop, if we don't have these certain foods in the house, maybe we'll start eating less of the, there's just, it's really, not everybody has the same experience. And so ultimately I think the takeaway is just be alarmed whenever you hear such simple solutions for complex problems.
Yes.
Just that's it.
Yeah. Go stick with the solutions that we are proven to know help, And then the things that are a little more outside of the box, nothing wrong with being aware. I want them explored too, but don't focus on those maybe to fix some of the more core, fundamental, known for concrete issues.
Love it. Love it. Gentlemen, thank you. This is a little different from our normal thing, but I've really enjoyed this. You good?
Yeah, I'm good. No, I was smiling because you referenced your dad and about the things that he could control and, limiting those things. And then even like when people would bring cookies and stuff into the office, he'd always have just cut a little bit off. And then I see Dante this morning, someone brought donuts. He's over there, he's cutting a little piece off. I'm like, I was just thinking in my head this morning, I'm like, wow.
The best was my dad whenever he, really started researching this stuff and really getting into this stuff. And he just got rid of all the white bread in the house. And all we had, he went straight, not from like white to wheat, but from white to Ezekiel bread.
Bread.
Very healthy, 100%. But that's a big jump.
That is a
I don't know what, maybe I was 10, 12, 13. And I was like, I'm not eating this toast. I'm not, so there's a balance in all of those things.
Sure.
Even in how my dad approached it, how I approach it with my kids. And, a lot of those things, I am fortunate enough to be able to purchase some of those, even if they're processed. I'm still aiming for me a little higher quality of a processed food. Not everybody has the knowledge to do that, to be able to do that, the time and the finances to be able to do those things. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with some government help in that way. The specifics of which I'm not here to tell you I can solve, but it would be remiss to not mention that the access, even just the ability that Dante and I had to navigate eating healthy because of what our parents presented to us versus what a lot of kids do not have. They do not only not have the access to the healthy food, but they have tons of access to the unhealthy food. It's difficult. And then when some of those metabolic issues start unraveling, then to kind of get them back on track, it's very difficult. So I'm all for looking at this in a different way. And I hope that that's what comes out of this and not just a big fight over.
Yeah. Again, anybody that's bringing the metabolic issues of the country to the forefront and bringing it into the conversation, let's do that. That's a good thing. Now, let's find some solutions. Mm-hmm. That's it for us this week. Thanks so much, as always, to Michael Deppish, our editor, Joyce Gibb, our nurse practitioner, and all the other wonderful folks involved. If you have any questions or want to get something to us, email us, questions@AskJoeDiMatteo. That is questions@AskJoeDiMatteo.com. You can also leave a comment on this, on the video that you're watching, or anywhere else. We respond to all that stuff, but the best place is questions@AskJoeDiMatteo.com. You should also visit that website, AskJoeDiMatteo.com. You can find all the products that we love and recommend there on the website. You can find past episodes of this show or the show that started all of this, the Ask Joe DiMatteo show, all there on that website. That's Joey DiMatteo. That's Dante DiMatteo. That's Josiah Schweinberg. I'm Tyler Andrews. Thanks so much, guys.